Started right on time. So welcome, everyone. Happy fall. So we're going to start Board of Health Monday, October 19th. I guess we'll start the meeting. If we want to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so let's review the September meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve? Did anybody have an opportunity to look them over? And we want to thank you to Kathy for taking those. Kathy Durr, who's not here, she's away, but she took the meeting minutes. I have a motion?
Yeah.
A second?
A second.
Okay, thank you very much. So noted that the meeting minutes from September 21st are approved. Okay, so Marie, do you want to give us a Office of Emergency Management overview update?
Sure. Good evening. I wanted to welcome the students here to the Board of Health. I will keep it very short so we can move on. I just wanted to let you all know that I have updated our email contact list to include the students, so they'll be on the back and forth from here on out. We have one member of the Board of Health who's up for reappointment, Mr. Karate. Your term is up at the end of the year. Do you want to be continue for the next 4 years?
Let me think about that.
Okay, just let me know when you can. Again, just to mention again, Delaware County Intercommunity Health is hosting a drive-through flu shot clinic, free for residents. The next scheduled one is 10/22 and 10/23, and that's at Middletown Fire Company from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. More information on that can be found at delcopa.gov. We've sent updated guidance on occupancy and self-certification for restaurants and businesses. That went out over the last week or so. Tonight is the Board of Commissioners Zoom meeting with the budget presentations. If anybody's interested, you can go to Radnor YouTube and watch that live or whenever you have time. And just a quick OEM update. We updated the staff interim protocols today. They went out today. I did not get them to you all today, but I will email those to you tomorrow to review. And then the Township, the OEM put together a letter. We had a lot of questions from our residents about Halloween. And although the Township did not take a stance either way, we did put a letter together that provided guidance that is consistent with the CDC, Department of Health, as well as Chester County. So we made those links available in the letter, and we are updating that as it is updated through, federally and through the state. So that is on our website, and we will stay current with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Appreciate that update. So old business. I guess we don't have any right now, but I thought Drs. Karabassi and Duman can talk about the our student interns, if you don't mind. That would give us an update.
We welcome our 2 student interns. We had a group of 11 students that applied. First, I want to thank Dave and Linda and Lisa for participating in the selection process. I'm happy to say that we have 2 fabulous interns, Suman Lee and Tricia Piradarshi. Is that how you pronounce it? I did good? And I think instead of me introducing them, I'd like you guys to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself and what your plan is in terms of your project. And welcome.
Hi, I'm Sumin. I'm currently a senior at Radnor, and right now for our student intern project, we're thinking about how to make the health curriculum in Radnor to be more inclusive and more aware of mental illness and mental health for teens in a relatable way. And yeah, that's the basis of our project. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Trisha Priyadarshi. I'm a junior at Radnor High School. And yes, so Suman and I, we thought of the idea to reform the mental health curriculum at the high school. So from our experience in the health classes that we've had so far, I think we both think that it can be more updated to meet like what teenagers nowadays face. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and we'll be in touch, via email.
And thank you for coordinating, Jane and Lisa, for all that work you did there. So it was an unbelievable amount of students. So I've been doing this several years, and we maybe have 4 or 5, and we had quite a number of candidates. So, and your letters definitely stood out as excellent. So congratulations. That's wonderful. Okay, so we're going to have our first presentation, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Jackie Kloss, and I didn't know if Dr. Winters wanted to introduce her. And the topic will be Achieving Optimal Sleep Health Strategies for Adolescents During COVID-19.
Good evening. I want to thank the Board of Health for this opportunity to come before you and share again about the issue of adolescent sleep. Since you initially gave us an important boost by supporting efforts to examine sleep deprivation among teens in Radnor nearly 4 years ago, we've come a long way. The League of Women Voters members, along with many others throughout the area, have grown the Regional Adolescent Sleep Needs Coalition from a group around a kitchen table into a multi-county, tri-state network of resources and individuals regarding sleep needs. After study and reflection, the Radnor High Schools moved to have a start time at 8:30 a.m. in 2019. However, we still have work today as we address the social, emotional, and physical needs of students as they relate to adequate and appropriately timed sleep. Tonight, I have one of the great local resources who is working to address these issues with us. It's my privilege to introduce Dr. Jackie Kloss. She's a Radnor resident and a parent of students in our schools. As a licensed psychologist, she practices at Bryn Mawr Psychological Associates. Her expertise is in behavioral sleep medicine, helping older adolescents and adults to overcome their sleep problems. She is co-founder of the Behavioral Sleep Medicine Associates, a practice developed specifically to deliver sleep education to schools, communities, and corporations. Jackie is a part of the Regional Adolescent Sleep Needs Coalition and served on the Radnor Township School District's Sleep and School Start Time Committee. The current pandemic has changed much in our lives and those of teens. We welcome Jackie to help us understand what is happening and to recommending what we can do to help our students get back on track. Thank you.
Okay, if I take this off while I speak? All right, thank you. Thank you, Roberta. It's so nice to see everyone here. Let me just put this in presentation mode. And I hope that this is something that not only, a lot of this will apply to adults as well, so I hope we could expand some of this in terms of receiving this information. I developed this, I want to acknowledge my colleagues that I developed this presentation with, Dr. Rochelle Zazula, Dr. Catherine Dalsgaard. We've been a part of the Regional Adolescent Sleep Need Coalition, and we really just want to disseminate this information so that it will be useful for parents and families, and especially teens. So the title is, again, Achieving Optimal Sleep Health. And what I really want to focus on is strategies for adolescents during the pandemic. As we've all probably have come to know, distance learning has influenced adolescent sleep patterns, and there's a number of reasons for this. And we learned a lot about this, especially during the spring and the summer. Freedom from early alarms, variable virtual start times on school days. There's been less structured and inconsistent academic schedules, restrictions and or changes in social, physical, and extracurricular activities, things that usually keeps teens on the rhythms, multiple social and emotional adjustments, and a number of newfound stressors and or for some, even stress relief. We don't hear about that as much these days, but there's a lot of changes in schedules and pressures. changes in meal timing and dietary choices, and increased dependence on technology for social engagement, entertainment, and academics. And if you take all of these things together, it can create a bit of a storm for adolescent sleep. So, and we really want to help adolescents establish good sleepy health as an important mood regulator and important health factor to keep them anchored during these difficult times. Part of what we did, and I just want to give this as briefly as background before we jump into the strategies, but I'm part of the RASNAC group with Dr. Winters and Amy Goldman. We put together a very brief survey to try to get a feel for just how sleep has changed. And we found some interesting bullet points that I want, or interesting facts that I wanted to kind of go through here. It was a convenience sample. I'm not going to tout this as a tight experimental design. But what we did is we surveyed 131 parents and or guardians on behalf of 177 teens. What we found is the majority of adolescents, 86%, met the recommended 8 to 10 hours during the stay-at-home orders. Kind of a silver lining, but they didn't have those. They were sleeping much more within their own circadian rhythms. We didn't have those early alarms. We didn't have early school start times, kind of validating in terms of our experiences with how important those factors are. 81% felt more rested. 15% felt about the same. But clearly, one of the things that was important is we were asking how are they doing with these altered schedules during that, and we did this during the summer. But really, one of the things that we believe to be true is not having those stringent start times, early alarm clocks allowed them to sleep more within their rhythm. And of course, they didn't have as many demands extracurricularly, et cetera, to keep them up. But that's something important to keep in mind. Obviously, it was a convenient sample, but it points to the importance of looking at how important it is for teens to sleep within their rhythm. Based on that, it really kept us to keep drawing our attention and not forget about sleep during this time. And what I really want to go through is some important things to keep students in a regular rhythm. And I think one of the things that we're confronting across districts right now, across schools, is there's a number of variable start times, even within, when students need to wake up, and we've been obviously very fortunate in Radnor to have 8:30 start times, and we've had that instituted, but sometimes you're getting up an hour earlier to get to school, sometimes you're waking up 5 minutes before class at 8:30, and it's really important to keep sleep on our radar and the importance of that. And beyond the start time, really looking at how do we protect our sleep. And how do we protect student sleep, because it is so very important in terms of health and well-being. So the first thing that we can help our students with and adolescents with is to make sleep a priority. Sleep is as critical to health as diet and exercise, and driving that point home is really important. And what we really hope to do is empower adolescents to make informed choices about their sleep that can last a lifetime. Teens need about 8 to 10 hours per night. They get much, much less than that, usually much less than 7 hours. And just as reference, children ages 6 to 13 need about between 9 and 11 hours, and adults need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. And that's just something to keep in mind with scheduling and what people ought to be getting to keep themselves healthy. One of the important things to do to protect sleep is to help students keep a consistent sleep-wake schedule. And this goes for adolescents, adults, all through the ages. What's important is to establish and keep a consistent sleep-wake schedule even in the absence of a regular school schedule. So even if it varies from time to time, if 7:30 they're getting up at 6 a.m. when they need to kind of take an earlier bus in, or if they're rolling out of bed, and you always want to anchor that time at the earliest time of the work day or the school day that they'll need to get out, because that's what sets the rhythm. That's what sets the exposure to bright light in the morning. That's what basically helps them establish good sleep drive towards the end of the day, building up enough time, and keeps them sleeping on a regular schedule. We also like to recommend that they avoid oversleeping on non-school late start days and weekends. I know this is challenging, having adolescents of my own, but keeping it within an hour is reasonable, but the more that can be accomplished, that helps, because as you know, if they sleep until noon on Sunday, getting back to a 11 or 12 o'clock bedtime on a Sunday night can be really difficult if they only woke up at noon. They don't build enough drive to be able to fall asleep at a reasonable time. And then when Monday morning rolls around and they need to get up at 7 o'clock, it can be very difficult. So it's very important not to oversleep during those times and really budget one's sleep throughout the week. And lastly, in terms of the consistency, it's important to also look at sleep and sleep problems not only as a nighttime issue, but also a daytime issue. So really helping people understand that sleep is on a rhythm, but so is social, academic. The more people can keep and students can keep a daytime routine, meal timing, exercise, whatever they can get, and so important to keep up with whatever opportunities they can, even during the pandemic, with getting consistent, regular exercise. That all helps with the sleep rhythm. So I think that's really important to drive home. Next is something we refer to as practicing good sleep hygiene. We hear about dental hygiene all the time. It's metaphorically about the same in terms of protecting good sleep. So one of the things we want adolescents to do is to protect their sleep. And these are some hints that can be helpful in terms of sleep quality. So keeping the bedroom environment as cool, dark, and quiet as possible. And here's one that's more of a challenge, the next bullet: elimination of light, especially blue light sources. We all hear about this quite frequently, but this is even more challenging now because they're on electronics so much and they're dependent on electronics so much, but especially eliminating blue light sources in the bedroom, allowing for natural production of melatonin, which, as you know, is the sleep hormone and helps facilitate good sleep. So the darkness hormone, it gets secreted when things are dark, and if there's light suppressing that, they're not going to be able to utilize their own body's natural resource, and that will pose a challenge to sleep. Keeping a noise-free environment will enhance the depth of sleep. Some people may even prefer white noise to just quietness, so a fan running or some kind of a basic humming sound often works for that. And this one, I think the last bullet point here, I think is really important. There's this concept of stimulus control. You want the bed and ideally the bedroom to be a cue for sleep and sleep only. Not a cue for laying in bed and doing homework, not a cue for all the Zoom classes that they need to be on. You want to have a divide and make the bed and bedroom a stimulus for sleep, and wherever possible, do schoolwork outside of the bed or bedroom. Now, that's not always possible when you have 4 or 5 family members in the home and there's not that much space all on Zoom doing things. But even if there can be a divide between the bed and maybe a chair or ideally a desk in the room, at minimum, to separate sleep, the cues for sleep, separate from the cues from work. Because you don't want to get into bed thinking that, oh, this is my time for, they accuse me, oh, I have a bio test tomorrow, I have to work on this project. So if you can create any kind of physical divide to be a psychological divide, I think that's really important. And keeping any kind of stimulation, be schoolwork, social media, gaming, out of bed, and ideally the bedroom. That could be really important. And that's important for all of us in terms of working on this. I don't think this takes too much more emphasis on here, but unplugging at night, I think it's really important to set electronic curfews. Keeping phones and devices outside the bedroom, and I know that's often a challenge, but the more we can encourage that, or at least powering them off or down and having that separate from the sleep area. Using an old-fashioned alarm clock instead of an alarm on a cell phone, because that's the common argument that they'll say, I need to have my phone in there. But I think it's really important to teach that early on. If not always good at doing that, but I think that's the one of the things that we hope to instill. And also adjusting, there's a lot of good technologies to help with fighting these technological barriers to sleep. Adjusting the display to turn down blue light. There are apps such as Nocturne or or F-Lux that you can use for the Mac or PCs, and I'm highly encouraged. There's goggles or glasses, so orange-colored glasses with spectrum control technology. They actually, a lot of the kids I've noticed, my own teens have purchased them, and I think it does help with, to some degree, some with various success more than others, but even wearing them during the day to help. A lot of kids get different kind of symptoms with that. I think that can help prevent some of these things. So anything that helps to filter, again, it's not ideal. We hate to see them on their computers for 10, 12, 14 hours a day, but this is the reality that we're in now. So things that we can use to help buffer, I think, are very important. And getting towards some other piece here, I think it's really important to provide a buffer to have, and sometimes it's really a challenge to get people off their teens and even ourselves off of our devices. So maybe think about it like we're going to have buffers, especially before bed, a buffer zone. So, or during the day, a couple of hours or a half hour or even, 15 minutes where between classes or wherever possible to kind of have device-free periods, just where you kind of don't touch it at all. You put it somewhere else, even for a half hour or hour. If we could free up some of that space with the technology to kind of help that. But the wind down is really important because the technology can be very stimulating, and not only in terms of blue light, but cognitively stimulating, academically stimulating, socially stimulating. And that releases a lot of adrenaline and makes it very incompatible with winding down and getting good sleep. So having a good wind down period is really helpful. And helping teens select activities, even if it's for a half hour, ideally an hour, but even if it's for a half hour before getting into bed, selecting activities to help the brain and the body to wind down before sleep. So things like music or meditation or yoga or prayers, or reading an old-fashioned book like a paper book. Nothing too stimulating. It's also helpful a warm shower or bath several hours before bedtime. Even things like aromatherapy. I think there's anything that someone can do to help transition the close of the day and then move into the sleep so that they don't carry a lot of that activation into the bed. And this one's obviously, important, but I think we also have to be mindful of this, limiting caffeine or caffeinated products. We're not going to say teens don't use them. It's really using them judiciously, being wise about using caffeinated beverages or foods throughout the day, and things like coffee, tea, chocolate sodas, and you can get an idea on there how different milligrams of caffeine that are in these different products. Avoiding energy drinks, I think, is really important. Obviously, avoiding nicotine. But I think it's really important. 1 cup of coffee in the morning, that's fine. I think that's going to would wear off. But, these things are important to keep in mind. And if a student is using too much of that, you also have to ask, are they not getting the sleep that they need at night? So are they using that because it's a compensatory mechanism, or then they're reaching for that? They shouldn't need to have a Red Bull in order to function during the day. That can be a signal that they need to get better sleep or a lot more opportunity to sleep at night. And lastly, I think it's important, and it's great to hear what the students are thinking about now in terms of health, assessing signs of stress, anxiety, and changes in mood, having our radars in touch with that. I know this is really challenging given that a lot of faculty or teachers that are interacting with students, a lot of that is really hard to pick up on online. It's hard to pick up those cues. But really, as parents, as anyone who's interacting and working with teens, attending to, monitoring, and helping teens manage stress, anxiety, and sad mood, which it is overwhelming right now for a lot of students. And all of these factors can negatively impact sleep-wake patterns, and conversely, getting poor sleep or not allotting appropriate opportunity for sleep and not sleeping with one's own rhythm, that can perpetuate or trigger bouts of anxiety and mood changes. So these things are very reciprocal in terms of sleep and mood. So I think it's important to be aware of that. And as you and your child shift the sleep schedule and prepare for the many changes in routine that accompany the start or the continuation of the school year, some anxiety, irritability, sadness, it's natural. Like, I think in the very beginning, you know, we're knee deep into things now with the school year. So some adjustment is very natural, and I think that's to be expected. It's when it's no longer temporary and students continue to, it becomes a little bit more chronic. Now we're into October. If those adjustments are more difficult, and we just started, like, we're only 2 to 3 weeks into kind of the hybrid model now with us personally. But beyond that, if after several weeks those symptoms persist, then it might be worth talking to someone, and that would be the recommendation. When in doubt, check it out. Like, try to seek someone to talk to. Parents can, you know, consult with someone, and I think it's really important that we catch these things as early as we can if these changes are noted and if they seem excessive or disproportionate to the stressors that students are facing. And that's the idea here, prepare and consult as needed. So if you have 2 full weeks for sadness, irritability, or several months for anxiety, consider reaching out to a school counselor, discuss your concerns and whether a referral to a mental health professional is indicated. And that's all I have. Thank you. I don't know if you wanted to do questions or anything, but if anyone needs to reach out
Sure.
to
It was
me, yeah.
excellent. Thank you so much. I had the question written down, how do I identify not enough sleep? And I think you thoroughly answered that.
Okay.
So, because I have a senior in high school. So, but it's funny because even in his room, he's doing all his studying in the room, and the bed's over on the other side of the room, and he's
That's-
up there all the time.
yeah.
But he seems to be okay. But
Yeah, and taking breaks and ensuring that there's outside, you know, they're getting out of their rooms too. I think that was, especially in the spring, it was really difficult. People we were all very limited in where we can go, getting out for walks, whatever can be accomplished to help break that, break the day and create a rhythm.
it's very challenging to convince an adolescent to go out and jog and do stuff. So I think we can all relate to that. Any questions?
I have a question. Well, first of all, thank you. That was a very informative talk. Appreciate it. Have you shared this information with parents of school children? Because it would be very valuable to them as well as to the students.
I know we've posted on several venues, and I don't know if Roberta can speak more to that about where it is. I know it's on the RASNAC website, and if there's a way, we have all this, and the recommendations in a PDF, and I might have circulated to someone, but if not, you can get in touch with me, and we can repost it somewhere, and that would be fine.
A township website for sure, but
Yeah.
I don't know if we could put it in the high schools somehow. I mean, I think that would be very meaningful.
Happy to share with whatever we can to get that information out there.
So along those lines, to what extent are you in contact with, communication with, consultation with the school board, for whom this is really the important
Yeah.
information, more so, I would say, even than the Board of Health, and are they tuned into this?
Yes, especially so. So Amy Goldman, who's on our school board, we work very closely with her, and we worked very closely with the school board prior to the pandemic and actually shifting the school start times. And she's also serves on chair of the RASNAC committee, so she's, you know, intimately familiar with the type of work that we're doing.
Are we collecting any data?
We need to return to that. I think that hasn't been the high priority in terms of all the things the school board needs to face right now. We can raise that issue again in terms of looking at that. I would love to see us tracking. I know we had really good intentions in following the school start times and collecting data, but I think given what happened during the pandemic, I'm not sure where that stands. I think we probably should revisit that. I need to figure out where that's at right now, or I think it might be helpful to figure out where that's at, because that will definitely
I would turn around the first thing you say, and every decision they make is,
Yeah.
each decision they make is going to be controversial.
Yeah.
And if the decisions are made in a situation where you actually gather data, then you can either make a better decision or you can support the decision that you made. So I wonder if it wouldn't be actually worth the time and effort to try and get those data. I was going to say that around the change in school time, where wouldn't it be nice to have data to demonstrate that a pretty significant disruptive act that had a lot of support, but also some resistance, that you could demonstrate some
We actually,
benefit.
there is, and we did start analyzing that. Haven't we haven't really followed back around since the pandemic to see where that was at, but there is and was a plan in place. So I'm just not sure what's happening, with that. Now it's time to revisit. Yeah.
So last September was the first time that the
Yes.
changes went into
Yes.
implementation.
And
And
there
so
was-
really,
yeah.
we only had 6 months
Right.
versus,
And we had preliminary data that I believe the board had presented a couple months into that too, with how things were going, and that's when everything kind of shifted.
I was so excited to hear, I wanted to see a whole year of
I
the
know,
delayed
me
school
too.
time data. I mean, I was just so excited. So
Yeah.
my son doesn't go to the high school, but they have delayed school times where he is in the city, so.
I definitely can speak anecdotally to the survey data that a lot of, like I was able to see, like people are, the student, and taking this into consideration, what we did through RASNAC, which is a separate but related group, obviously. Students are feeling more rested. Anecdotally, we need better, metrics, but anecdotally, there's a lot of a positive response in terms of that, so. it's been positive.
I have, Dr. Klaus, great presentation, thanks. I have a question about blue light. So what is blue light? Is it blue light because it looks blue? Is it the blue only from computer screens and cell phones, or is blue light in other types of light? And then also, what does it do to the brain that impacts sleep?
So I think, and I don't know the physics of it all in terms of exactly where exactly on the spectrum it is, but you will get it through any device. So phone, screen, television, all those kinds of devices. And what happens is the process I'm more familiar with. So it doesn't necessarily look blue. So it's not like, so I think that's where it lies, from what I understand, on the spectrum of light sources. That's where it is, but don't quote me on that. But essentially what happens, the melatonin is secreted when there's darkness. And we know that blue light will suppress melatonin. So what happens and especially when devices are very close to one and there's no buffer or barrier, like it's different if you're watching a TV, a small screen TV, and it's at a greater distance. But when you're very close, a lot of that light can decrease the production of melatonin. And melatonin is the hormone that helps initiate, it's soporific, it helps initiate sleep and maintain good sleep. So it helps you feel sleepy at a certain time. Adolescents are already delayed in their production of melatonin because at puberty there is a delay until early adulthood. So they're night owls. They can't fall asleep on average prior to 11 p.m. And when you introduce blue light on top of that, then that further suppresses the production of melatonin, so it will push the secretion even longer. So that's the net effect, so to say. But you should be aware that it's, anything like kind of emitted through computer screens, televisions, any kind of devices, iPads, that kind of stuff. Probably less so on a smaller device, but like certainly a laptop like this where you're sitting close to and working at, you would have a problem with.
Thank you so much. It was extremely informative, very well organized and succinct, and I learned a lot.
All right, thank you.
Thank
and
you
hopefully
so
we can
much.
disseminate it and get
And
it out
Marie,
there.
would we be able to post that on our township website? That'd be awesome. And then who do we connect her with for the high school if we want to
Well,
get out there?
I could pursue
You'll work on that?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
work on that. Yes,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Kloss. Thank you, Roberta.
Can I just mention, before the presentation, I did send that was going to Ms. Kevgis at the high school, the principal. I did let the public relations people know in the school district as well. So hopefully they will link on and be connected.
Wonderful, and keep doing great work.
And also a couple of the parents, the high school parents, I also let them know, as well as Ms. Goldman, so.
Okay. Well,
hopefully-
we look forward to more data and more information down the road. Thank you so much, really appreciate it. Okay, I didn't know if we wanted, Superintendent, did you want to come up and talk? Thank you so much.
I wanted to thank the board for taking some extra emails and taking some time to evaluate the proposed ordinance. And I would like to be very clear with the audience. The ordinance that we are concerned about and ask the Board of Health of Radnor Township to weigh in on is from Delaware County Council. It is not a Radnor Township ordinance, and it's listed as number 2020-8. I won't go over the whole ordinance. I'm giving each of you a copy of the proposed ordinance as we provided it off of their website and information. The final review and adoption of this is October 21st, 2020 at 6 p.m. There'll be another hearing where comment and other things, and then County Council will decide to enact it or not enact it, or make amendments as recommended. We asked the Board of Health, we just had some concerns. I would like to say that we, as law enforcement, were able to add some commentary, which the DA's office, Jack Stolzheimer, took very seriously, and we're appreciative of those actions. One of the things that we asked the Board of Health to weigh in on is sort of the open concept of the use of marijuana, in particular to minors. And Lieutenant Pino, who is standing beside me, was on a conference call with one of the state senators and reviewing the policy with the DA's office as well before this upcoming hearing. So it's in front of you, but it does permit or allow or suggest that minors, which are not defined where that starts and stops, but on anybody under the age of 18. So the way we are interpreting this, and again, it's only a draft, is that somebody who is 15 years old could smoke marijuana and not under 30 grams and not face any penalties, with the exception of a civil charge where there is a $50 fine and the parents would be notified. The other concern is in the definitions, in my opinion, of public space, which means any street, alley, highway, traffic way, park, sidewalk, or a vehicle in or upon any of the referenced areas, or any other place to which the public is invited. So that means it goes that you could be in a park and utilize this type of smoking, which is discouraged through the Young Lungs Act and many other things. But we just wanted to bring it to the board's attention for the health aspect of it. The police department, if it's enacted, we follow the rules of the federal government, the state, and local ordinances here.
So just to clarify, so if I get caught smoking under the age of 18, what happens? Just regular tobacco?
They have upgraded the law in reference to purchasing regular tobacco to be 21. So you have to be 21, and Lieutenant Pino also believes that is also a federal mandate as well.
The big difference, Madam President, I'm sorry, I apologize, is smoking tobacco under the age of 21 is still considered a crime. So you would be cited under the Crimes Code. You can pay a fine anywhere between $250 to $500. It's a scaling fine. If you're caught multiple times, the fine would go up. The smoking of marijuana is completely decriminalized. So it is just a civil penalty. So the age requirement is irrelevant. If you're 12, you're 22, you're 35, 62, and you're smoking marijuana in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you're going to get the same civil violation. There's no need to differentiate age because it's not a criminal offense. We differentiate the age with tobacco because it's still considered a criminal offense. And it has recently moved, as the chief said, from 18 to 21 years of age. So you're 21 years of age, 20 years and 11 months, you can't buy a pack of cigarettes. But if you're walking down the street smoking a joint, you're just eligible for a civic fine. You're not going to get a monetary criminal fine like you would for smoking a Marlboro. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Is this like politically motivated? Is somebody pushing this? I'm just curious.
So what we'll just say that we have a proposed ordinance, and we're concerned about the health and welfare of the citizens and minors in Radnor Township, and that's the only reason we're bringing this forward. I cannot answer that.
I'm just curious what we can do, but go ahead, Jen, weigh in.
No, I'm confused. This says the ordinance shall not be construed to supersede any existing Pennsylvania or federal law, but this is stricter than the state law, correct?
There is, as of right now, marijuana in Pennsylvania, without being under medical marijuana, is illegal.
Okay.
What Delaware County is quite frankly going to do, and they made it abundantly clear in the Zoom I was on, so I'm not speaking out of turn. They're going to decriminalize marijuana. It is going to only be what's called a civil violation. So once you leave Delaware County, and say you're out in the middle of the state or somewhere, and you're smoking the same joint, and you're not a medical marijuana card holder, you're going to get arrested. It's going to be a misdemeanor charge, and you're going to have a criminal history. In Delaware County, They're not going to do that.
But how can the county be less strict than the state? I thought the county can be more strict than the state, but not less.
That's a great question. I can't answer that for you. I don't know. But that's just what they're going to do. I'm sorry, Chief.
No, no, he answered, we can't answer for their actions, but we did send it to our solicitor to make sure for the police department it's clear legally. And I don't want to get into the legal side of it. It's just, again, that health impact. What I think you can do is be prepared for this to be discussed at a township level at some point in time. It's not listed on the agenda of the Board of Commissioners. You have the opportunity, either as a Board of Health or individual, to comment to county council or attend the meeting and make comments thereof. So I think that those things are all impacts that have some value for sure. It seems to be very favoritized. I don't know what the votes will be, so I can't comment, but it definitely has a extremely positive spin from the pulse we've taken at county council level.
But then at the township level, the township can be stricter on that than the county or the state, correct?
From a law enforcement standpoint, there's three significant facts. A, this ordinance is going to happen, and it's going to decriminalize marijuana. It's only going to make it a civil penalty. Two, this county ordinance is never meant to or will not ever supersede any municipality or township ordinance that the township should create.
Got it.
The significant difference in there, you're right, we could write a much stricter, harsher penalty than the county did. But if you write under the county ordinance, all the money goes to the county. They're promising that the money will go towards rehab facilities and education and things the like. If you write a ticket underneath a township ordinance, the township would keep all money. The third and final step, which is most pertinent to us as law enforcement, is that, and this is straight from the district attorney himself, you will not charge possession of a small amount of marijuana, possession of marijuana drug paraphernalia as a standalone primary charge without express written permission from the DA's office. And he made it abundantly clear, unless they are overwhelmingly egregious, thank you, Chief, circumstances, they're not going to authorize it. They're not going to allow you to arrest anybody. Now, that does not mean it cannot be a secondary charge. So, for example, if you stop somebody in a car, you have an odor of marijuana, case law says never allowed to search the car, we search the car, we find a gun, we find something else, we charge them possession of a gun, possession of small marijuana, that is fine. But if you're just walking down the street, smoking a joint, I cannot stop you and charge you with possession of marijuana. And that goes up to and including 30 grams. And when I started, above 30 grams, you were automatically considered to be distributing marijuana. That's the long one. Now it's anything 30 grams or less is completely decriminalized.
So then this, I don't think any of these things mention what I think is the main form of marijuana for people now is edibles. And under the offense, it talks about smoking and marijuana, but it doesn't, does that include edibles? It doesn't mention them.
It does, and it will, and it
Okay.
all comes down to weight. So if you have a couple brownies, or you have a couple gummy bears, or something like that, it's not going to translate into 30 grams of marijuana from a practical standpoint. Now, I don't want to get into opinions, but it's a lot of marijuana. It's a significant amount of marijuana. So, yes, it's going to cover all that. Would come under paraphernalia and or possession of marijuana as well, your edibles.
Okay.
And again, one of the things, we did focus on parks and the health effects to minors, but also remind you that the way we read this, if Radnor Township doesn't take some type of action, then you would be able, in all our outside dining, to be able to stand on a corner, and people sitting at a table would have to ingest that secondhand smoke. It does go in conflict with the Young Lungs Act that Delaware County supports. That is one note that we wanted to make, just as something that they promoted, but yet this ordinance lists parks, so that is a concern of ours as well. The township solicitor is looking into this. Obviously, this only came out a little while ago, and we have it to Mr. John Rice. So I think if there was questions as well, we could get those via an email format, at least in the beginning, that you may have to have the solicitor evaluate.
I'm really confused because there are a number of different axes over which we have what feels like there may be some conflicts. One is 1821 adult. Another is, I thought that FCR, Code of Federal Regulation, was actually different from state law when it comes to cannabis, because there is no U.S. enabling legislation for medical marijuana or not. So there's already a conflict in the law. And the topic that was just brought up, having a small amount of edible in your pocket has a very different public health or personal health set of potential issues than smoking in public. So to me, I'm trying to figure out what are we trying to accomplish. I think that probably everybody on the Board of Health would agree that smoking in general and smoking in public in general are behaviors that we wish to discourage and outright eliminate, whether that smoking is a Marlboro or a self-rolled joint. But there are other counterbalances, and in children, I believe there's pretty good evidence that we don't really want to encourage utilization in children, so I'm confused.
I don't know if this will help, I hope it will help. Along with the Zoom meeting, there was, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman was involved in the meeting, he was there. Some of the points that he made abundantly clear were, one of the next steps that they are going to push for is the complete and total expungement of all simple drug charges, specifically marijuana. They're going to go away. It was brought up that the state police, Pennsylvania, is not on board with this right now. They're still following what they see, like you said, sir, is federal law saying that drugs are illegal regardless of what they are, as long as they're on one of the acts. And Schedule 1 is where marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug. He promised that there will be input from the governor's office to the highest ranks of the state police to make sure that that does not happen anymore. So they're just facts that came out of the meeting. I hope that we can see where it's going without getting involved in the politics, because that's not our job, just so you know where it's going and what they told us. He was upset that the fine was $50. He felt that was egregious, and he thought it should be just a
$25 fine.
or even less.
Right.
So, yes.
So yes, there are conflicts, and that's why we asked our solicitor to evaluate them. And that's why we also came to the Board of Health to ask to evaluate the health impacts. And I think we need to think how this can affect us. Like, we know there's a lot of outside dining in Wayne, our parks, over 300 square miles of parks, acreage, I should say, not miles. So just some key things to get on your agenda. I think it's important. I appreciate your time. We have to prepare for our other meeting. The Radnor Police are happy to come back. And again, I can coordinate any questions with Health Officer Carbonara and the solicitor if you have any of those. But I think the Board of Health should be prepared to think about this and possibly discuss with our commissioners. And I do encourage you, either on a personal level or if the board's authorized, to speak to Delaware County Council, as it's around the corner of the vote.
So when's this going to vote? This week?
So the vote is the 21st of October at 6 p.m. There was one reading of the ordinance already, and that's currently where we're at.
So we can be helpful to you by getting, because it sounds to me like it's just going to get a little, you're going to have federal law, you're going to have state law, and you're going to have county law. There are going to be conflicts among those three and inconsistencies between those laws and, for example, nicotine/cigarette and alcohol laws. And what can we do to be most helpful to you?
Do you need a letter from us or something, or?
So
I
again,
don't understand,
again, we'll do, the police officers, if the legislators, whether it be from the township level on up, put in laws and enact them, we faithfully serve them without bias or question. So focusing back on the health, to me, from being in Radnor, hearing all the things that everybody works on, our restaurants, our parks, and everything that are in our school community, which is the highlight of our area, and why you guys are frankly sitting up here, because it's a community worth protecting in every way, shape, and form. I think you should be prepared to discuss this with the commissioners, evaluate what can be done in a health manner to do the best for our community. So I think we have a little bit of time. This way you guys know about it, you're able to work on it. In the short term, you could make personal calls to Delaware County Council, or you could write a letter or attend the meeting. So those would be the options, and then clearly have a lot of options, very similar, but in a bigger scope in Radnor Township, because you guys are a citizen board and acted to review health matters and make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. And we have to go get on our link meeting so we can get our
Yeah,
budgets.
well, thank you.
and
I guess I can't wrap my head around the 18 years old. I don't understand why it's 18 and not 21.
Well, it's actually, you can smoke it at 14, the way we're reading it. It's minors does not,
There is no age, for example, you're 20 years old, you drink a beer, you're committing a crime. You're 22, you're drinking a beer, you're exercising your rights. There's no crime attached to marijuana anymore. It's completely decriminalized. They're only calling it a civil violation. So they're not even saying, okay, you can smoke marijuana once you're 21 and older. They're not saying that. They're just saying, if you're gonna smoke marijuana, you're subject to a civil fine, and that's it. Tobacco has recently been moved to 21, and I probably did not do it properly, and I apologize. Tobacco, sales, smoking, possessing is still in the Pennsylvania Crimes Code, that you cannot buy it, you cannot sell it, you cannot smoke it.
it would be a summary
It would
offense.
The law, as envisioned here, would be more accommodating of marijuana than it is of tobacco.
We don't want to answer for that, but as far as the age scale, and you have it in front of you, it appears to be no age scale. So you could be 12 years old and smoke marijuana, you would be considered a
That's
minor
horrible.
in the eyes of the Commonwealth, but there's no age line on this that we see. And again, we did not create it, so I don't want to misquote, but on face value, there's concerns with the definition of minor.
Yeah, and the way this reads, it doesn't even mention what all these kids are doing, which is gummies. It doesn't even mention, and they're all over the place. The other thing, my other question is, how does this impact, so if this is all civil and it's not a big deal anymore, and it mentions public spaces as including cars, if somebody's in their car and they're driving under the influence of a gummy, is it criminal or civil?
DUI will still stay in place. All the DUI laws will remain.
So under the influence is
So, yes,
considered
you can be under
marijuana
the
as well?
influence of
Okay,
alcohol, marijuana, or other harder drugs. You can
Okay.
still do a DUI, yes, ma'am.
okay.
Bringing this to our attention, we're going to talk offline, and we can decide as a board how we're going to proceed.
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you. Okay. All right, in the respect of time, I wanted to ask Dr. Simmons, I know he did a very nice presentation last month. It was cut short on COVID and flu. So I wanted to ask the board what they thought about, maybe do we want to do anything more offline in terms of maybe a Zoom call or something in the evening around COVID and flu?
So first, let me apologize. It wasn't that I was cut short. I went over time, and I have to apologize on that.
Come
But I
on.
think it's
Did a
a
great job.
massive topic, and I think it is deserving of, it's not going away anytime soon, and it is deserving of our attention as the board. So I also think we have other business to do and take care of, and it could just consume our meetings here. So if there is an interest on the part of the board, I am more than happy to come back in a Zoom meeting style and I'll rework the slides because there's a lot of things that have changed, and happy to have discussions. We could make it if that works, we could make it a more regular thing if we like. But the biggest thing, as always, is the issue is putting a calendar, okay? Putting a slot in the calendar. And so what my ask is tonight is to find out if there is enthusiasm for this, and certainly it could be voluntary. It doesn't have to be an obligate. If you're interested, fine. If you're not, fine. And then a mechanism for setting a time, knowing that many of you work. I'm retired, and I can be pretty flexible in that regard with enough events warning. So do we want to have it, and how can we actually put a slot in the calendar are the two questions.
Want to show of hands, or?
Yeah, I think it would be fabulous to continue. Would it be possible, we can set up a Zoom meeting, but is there any way we could record it for those who cannot attend?
You definitely can record with Zoom.
Yeah, I can talk to the township about that and how we'd go about it. I'm gonna get back to you guys.
All right, so I see Jane is interested. Anyone else? Okay. Dr. Dieman? Okay.
So can I ask if anybody's interested, maybe send some potential times for Zoom to Marie, and Marie and I will get together and figure out how to make that work? Can we do that?
Well, do you want to send out some dates and times that work for you, and then we'll just pick? Why don't you tell us what's good for you?
What I need to know is for people, time, and the evening hours become a problem because then you get too late. So what's the approximate time of day that we're aiming for? And then I can make it happen.
I usually work till 4 or 5 every day.
So is a 5 o'clock a good slot?
6 or 7, yeah.
6 o'clock is a better slot?
Yeah, I'm kind of 5, 6, kind of early evening. Yeah, agreed.
All right, and sooner is better, or sometime next week, a good idea?
Sure, yeah, how about next week? Give us some dates. Give us like 3 dates.
I'm gonna put some slots, I'll look at my calendar, figure out what that looks like, and put some dates down, and we'll go from there.
That'd be terrific. Thank you, Dr. Simmons, that's awesome. All right, does anyone have anything else they want to add? I hope I covered everything, let me just double check.
My mind is completely boggled by what we just heard. I don't have an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, and I could argue very strongly along every one of several different axes that about going in one direction or another. What do we do with what? The last thing I want to do is not give an answer to the superintendent when they've come to us and asked for something. But I think it needs some significant discussion.
I think we recommend that we, the township, do what we want to do. And if we want to be in compliance with what the county comes up with, then that's fine. But I think it would be better for the township to go one step beyond, because this is pretty lax what they're proposing as far as enforcement of marijuana as a penalty. It should be penalized.
I
Well,
just
at
have
this point, I
visions
mean,
of
there's
kids coming out of
multiple-
school,
This
like,
is
Yeah, there's
crazy.
I just have
multiple
visions of kids walking down the street like, oh, what the heck?
Well, it does say that there are some limitations, grounds of a public library or schools, but it doesn't say anything about parks. It doesn't say anything about
It
right
also
outside of a
lists
restaurant.
specific places, and any public place is really anything outside of a private home.
correct, or somebody's vehicle, I guess.
And as far as age goes, I mean, 21, and it should be criminal.
Well, so my problem is that each of those has their own built-in controversies. To
Yep.
be frank, how many colleges do we have in Radnor Township? How many of the people in those colleges are between 18 and 21? And how many of them do we want to start slapping township ordinances on and get involved into that game? Just, I'm going to lay out what these, and then for Delaware County, in the communities that are more urban, the notion that they're trying to decriminalize. They're trying to, let's go back to the crime bills of the 1990s that ended up putting a lot of people in jail and ruining a lot of lives for acts that have become much decriminalized. And do we want to go back in that direction? So I don't think it's, I think there are a lot of implications. On the other hand, I think it's totally crazy to have alcohol and tobacco criminal and marijuana not. So I think that there are a lot of questions that really need to be picked up and addressed. We certainly don't want to be promoting behaviors that impair the development of young minds, but I don't know that all of these are slam dunks. And
Well, the difference between alcohol and marijuana is alcohol can be something that's integrated with regular social things, like you have a glass of wine with dinner and the taste of alcohol. They're different. You're not just drinking to get drunk. Whereas with marijuana, you're only consuming it for one reason. It's not because, you want to be holding a joint or the gummies or brownies or whatever. There's one purpose. Whereas alcohol has many different purposes, and it's actually a relatively minor purpose for most people to get drunk, unless you're in college.
But isn't this legislation, again, more permissive when it comes to marijuana than it is with tobacco?
Yeah, it is.
That's
It's
kind of mind-blowing.
It's inappropriate. It's mind-blowing.
No, and I think the law as it applies to tobacco should at least apply to marijuana.
I got the impression from Superintendent Flanagan that we should attempt to look at this and move with the perspective about community health, because I think that's very clear and very simplistic and a way to attack this, that given that this ordinance would allow, so to speak, people to smoke in, quote, public areas, that could impact on the health of others. And if we just go from that perspective and just keep it simple, I think we have a very strong point to make about that. And, because, I mean, it is very complicated, it's very convoluted, and I don't think, given the time that we have, that we could get into all those factors.
I agree. I mean, we're not making criminal law, right? So we're not going to be responsible for whether something is, prosecuted or not. What we can be responsible for is the community and the public. And so therefore thinking of it in terms of healthy lungs, and if it's, illegal for you to smoke tobacco in a public park, then why shouldn't it be illegal for you to smoke marijuana in a public park?
So my only question, I think we have to vacate the room, is I don't think we have a unanimity of opinion now among ourselves, even if we confine ourselves to the health implications. And again, there are at least 3 different axes along which we need to get that. So I'm just asking, what do we need to do to have a process to serve our police and our Board of Commissioners in the best way? Because I'm not sure that somebody else would be ready to sign off on what I would write, or I would be ready to sign off on what somebody else would write.
All right, so I think it's great discussion. Let's talk offline this week amongst ourselves and figure out a plan. All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.